I'm actually really excited about this conversation. Both Camille and I are showing up here today being like, we have some plan because we also know that this type of topic is so organic and so personalized. And so for those of you who are on live, you're going to be able to ask questions and give examples. But the overarching theme of this topic today is about visibility vibes. So when you are thinking about growing your business, you're thinking about brand exposure, you're thinking about driving traffic online. There's many people in my circle who are like, I post on social media every day, but I don't know that I can actually link any specific client or business that they found me on Instagram or that they found me on Facebook. But we also know that part of posting on social media is kind of like having a resume. Hey, I'm open for business, giving value, being of service to people who are following us online. And so, especially if you are an empath, if you are someone who doesn't really want to be on social media every day for the rest of your life, then it can start to be like, well, how else could I be working smarter as opposed to harder? What could it look like to really be growing online? But we all see these people. We'll see people or Facebook ads or testimonials of people like, I grew my entire business by blogging. And you're like, oh, blogging, I could do that in my sweatpants and nobody would need to see my face. Or I have a crazy YouTube channel and it's blowing my business up. Actually, my accountant has grown her business exclusively by doing like very informal chats on her YouTube channel for 3 or 4 years. It's the only advertising she does. And then you hear about people really driving traffic to things from Pinterest. And those are not necessarily things we've kind of here in the membership really glanced on, like what is the difference between more daily content versus evergreen content. And I would think about blogging, YouTube, podcast, Pinterest as more evergreen. And what that means is that it's a topic and it's a format that people could stumble upon, because I think you can put a lot of effort into a really beautiful carousel on Instagram. And if 17 people see it today, those are probably the only 17 people that are going to see it. With the algorithm, how it works, it's not that likely that people are going to search the topic that you posted about in that carousel and find it 3 years from now. Could it happen? If there's someone who's meant to find you, they're going to find you. But when you think about where people are going to search, the behavior of searching to solve problems is really where you start to get to a place of having people inquire to you. And those platforms of blogging, podcasting, I'm curious to hear how people interact with podcasts. I don't typically just go in and search podcasts to be like, I want to learn about something, but maybe people do. It's more often that I hear of a podcast, that I am referred to a podcast. But when I'm trying to figure something out, I absolutely go to YouTube. Many of us go to Google or Bing or like your search engine, and DuckDuckGo is what my husband uses. It's a funny name. And we're searching, and how can we start to have you potentially showing up as the solution that is attached to the question people are searching? And that's really what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And we have Camille Kurtenbach who's going to come on. And Camille and I actually met in a separate membership. We met in a membership run by Sarah Weiss called the TikTok Tea. And we met there and we've done a couple different collaborations, and she's a mompreneur. She's amazing at, like, anytime she and I talk, I'm just like, ooh, I'm more excited to do these things. Thanks for energizing me. And we were talking recently about this topic that was kind of brought up in a Q&A call of, do I want to be posting on social media every day? Do I need to be? Are there other options? Are there pros? Are there cons? And so Camille is going to come on to share about her expertise in Pinterest and blogging, and really just to have this be an organic conversation. And I am also really happy that Camille is one of the beautiful experts that's a part of the Intuitive Marketing Collective. So I'll probably share this replay out. If you're seeing this in a funnel or in an email sequence, it's because Camille is actually a partner. If someone wants Pinterest services management or blogging services, I'm sure we could expand into other stuff. If you want something that Camille and I talk about today, you can reach out to her, or you can reach out to me, and we do have packages to support you. So Camille, what else should I say that's amazing about you? You're a mom, how long have you been, talk to us a little bit about how long you've been in the space. You have your own blog, you do blogging and Pinterest management and social media management for others. Give us the rundown of what you've been doing.
Sounds good. So yeah, I'm Camille. I am based out of Minnesota. So we are preparing for winter to be here before we know it. But I started in the MLM space in 2014. So my love for social media came from that and what I was being taught in the MLM space. I learned what I liked about it and I learned about what I hated about it. As a pretty introverted person, I loved the idea of making money without having to leave my house every single day to go to work. I have a 4-year degree in psychology. I use it in different ways now. Every time I say I don't use it, people correct me and are like, you work with businesses every single day. So you have to use the psychology brain at some point when you're working with other people. But I switched from MLM to general social media management in 2016 when I got married. And then I got hired for a marketing company out of California, and I did pretty much all their back end customer service for the course that they were selling. Because at that point, courses were companies' bread and butter, and people were buying them like crazy, especially in the marketing space. So I would deal with customer service emails that would come in. I cleaned up their Google Drive. So I learned, and it was a marketing course. So I was able to take the marketing course as part of working on their back end. So I learned a lot there as well. And then we got pregnant with my daughter. I told them I need 4 weeks to heal. I will slowly come back after that 4-week mark, working 1 or 2 days a week, depending on how I feel. And in that 4 weeks, they closed their doors without notice.
Oh,
So
I
I
didn't
had
know
no
that
job
part.
to go back to as a brand new mom. So no income coming in. And so that's when a friend was like, well, what did you like about that? So I picked the things I liked, which was mostly the evergreen, the cleaning up stuff in the back end, helping them write blogs, helping them repurpose their stuff, and took on Pinterest exclusive clients at that point because Pinterest was booming in 2018. And kind of just kept growing from there. Most of my clients are from Upwork. So I have a slightly different viewpoint than just marketing myself on social media because 95% of my clients start on Upwork, at least the conversations. Whether they send me a contract on Upwork is another story, which
We won't tell.
yeah, don't do that. You can get in big trouble for that. But having that my Instagram account that matches my name on Upwork has also brought people that have maybe looked at my profile, weren't quite ready after they had the initial conversation with me. I've noticed, especially in the last 2 years, people will go find my Instagram account and start following me on there. Or if I'm quote unquote too expensive at that point, they'll start to look at my Instagram account and see what I'm doing over there and then circle back. So that has been an interesting shift I've noticed in the since COVID. Yeah, so Pinterest is how I built my business. I built it the entire time I was home with my daughter. She just started kindergarten in September. So now I am opening up my service menu again to do Instagram management for some clients if I'm already on the back end of their business somewhere else, as well as this repurposing, giving them a repurposing plan, whether I'm the one executing it and they're just the ones creating the content and I'm the one that's working their way through the repurposing workflow that we create for them, or I just sit down with them in a call like this. Okay, what are you focusing on for the next 4 to 6 weeks? And then we kind of make a game plan for them, as well as obviously my Pinterest management and strategies, depending on where people are at for that. So it's kind of evolved from the MLM world to now being a fully run business that I am completely in charge of.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't know that part of you. There's a couple former corporate gals here, or even current corporate gals, and just hearing your story that you thought you would go back. Kudos to you to think you would go back 4 weeks after having a baby. You must be younger than I was when I had my baby. But so many things are shaky. And when we think, what I really loved that you just shared is that people are connecting with you. So for those of you not familiar, Upwork is like a freelancing site where you kind of like Fiverr, or where you as a or you as a business owner can go and put in a search and find someone and match up with a service provider like Camille. But what I thought was really interesting is that you said you might connect with someone where they're looking for an actual service. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe it's too expensive. Maybe their business needs to grow, but then they're following you on social media and getting value and building that relationship. And I think for many of us here, Shelly has a expo coming up where she's going to be at an in-person event where people are going to be coming to get mini sessions from however many people they sign up that day. And we've been talking about how maybe social media is part of like the credibility factor. Maybe they're going to follow you. Maybe you send a follow-up email so they remember who you are. Maybe it has a picture. And so when you think about, hey, let's get into blogging, let's get into Pinterest, let's get into some of these things, we often hear, but those are a longer game. Like, what are some of the realistic expectations? If someone were to say, you know what, in 3 or 4 years, I would like most of my traffic to be coming from blogging and driving traffic to that blog from Pinterest and really capturing, like, what's realistic? Should they keep posting on general daily social media and layer this in? Or is there a point where maybe it can tip and be mostly coming from one of these longer forms?
I think it kind of depends on the business owner. So a lot of my like brand new to Pinterest accounts that I've worked on this year alone, they have to show up somewhere else first because they're not originating their content on their own website for the most part at this point. They're either selling a product, like a physical product, a digital product, or they want podcast listeners, or they want people to download their freebie. And so as great as I would love to say that you can just start posting on Pinterest and the traffic will come instantly, new accounts need 6 to 12 months to really hone in on what works for you. So we can do all the keyword research up front based on what you think people are searching for. I can tell you that these Pinterest templates are beautiful and that they should show up in searches, but we're not the users.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times for what we sell. So you look at my Pinterest account, it's a hot mess because I don't spend time on it. That's not where my ideal client is looking for me. They're looking for me on Upwork or on Google or on Instagram, or even now TikTok becoming more of a search engine. I need to be mindful of what keywords I'm putting out and hashtags I'm using on those platforms, because my people are not coming to Pinterest to find a Pinterest manager. So you have to think about, where are your ideal clients or customers coming from? I have a client who's in the herbal tea space, does super well on TikTok, has had a couple of videos go viral, and they've done well, and they wanted to start ramping up their Pinterest account. So we're already have awesome static graphics, and we're already repurposing their TikTok videos. But once we hit that 4-month mark going into fourth quarter of working together on this, I was like, okay, we need to start layering in your blog posts now. Like, we have systems in place to get your TikTok videos repurposed correctly. You guys just updated your branding, so we fixed all of those static image templates. Now you need that evergreen content, because you can only post viral videos for so long before you burn yourself out as a business. So finding, once we had that workflow, it's like, okay, what can we add now? Because we're going into a new quarter, and you guys are still seeing growth to sustain that growth. Were they thrilled about having to write blog posts? No, but we talked about what was the hard part. Is it coming up with the content ideas? Is it sitting down to actually write the blog post? Or is it getting it formatted on your website? Because those are 3 steps that could
Mhm.
stop you from doing it. And originally it was content ideas. So that's where I was like, okay, so once a month I will send you, here's what's trending on Pinterest. You already know what you see on TikTok because they do their own TikTok videos. I have no part in that. So I'm like, so between you doing your own research on TikTok to know what you want to post there and me doing research in my zone of genius on Pinterest, we should be able to come up with 2 to 4 blog posts a
Mhm.
month for you.
Mhm.
Even if you just put them in a Google Doc, I can put them on your website. Like that's not
Mhm.
a that's
Yeah.
not a big thing. So finding what the hurdle was or the resistant was
Mhm.
super helpful. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's easy then. If you help me with putting them on my website and giving me the content ideas, I have no reason not to.
Totally. Well, and something that you and I talked about when planning this was that, especially if you're a solopreneur and maybe you don't have a team yet, to really think about what does light you up. Like if someone is sitting here and saying, I don't want a blog that feels like so many bottlenecks, but I am excited about talking on a podcast, or I do love doing videos, to really think through if you're going to start with one, let's say, social media platform. I think most of the people watching this are at least on Instagram or Facebook, and one of the more long form, to really think about what feels exciting, what feels easy, what doesn't feel like this huge learning curve. Because then, as you're saying, over time, you can take those pieces and start to repurpose them. Like if you are an amazing writer and you like doing the blogging, then maybe you can work up your courage over time to like read that blog as a script on a YouTube video down the road, or like taking what you're good at and then putting it out in different ways. Do you feel like that's a good strategy?
I do. I think, like you said, we met in Sarah's membership, which is now actually the Cozy Content Corner, because she also,
Oh, gotcha. Right, right.
yep, she's also in this avenue of like, I'm really good at short form video, but you guys needed more than that. So she
Mhm.
has branched out a little bit as well. But we just did a repurposing call as like a group a
Mhm.
couple weeks ago. And the big thing was, what's the big idea? Like, what's the top of our web? What is the
Mhm.
big thing you want? Whoa, what was that?
You just had little hearts.
I know, I've never had Zoom
Never
do
seen
that
that. How
before.
did you do that?
I don't know. But anyway, so you have that big idea, and then it's either you can sit down and create the web yourself of additional talking points or additional pain points
Mhm.
or additional questions you get asked about that big topic, and then decide what those smaller formats are going to be. Is it going to be just a random post on, or not random, but like just a post on Instagram? Is it going to be a carousel? Is it going to be a short form video?
Mhm.
You have to sit down and figure out what you like doing and then essentially work backwards. So one of my clients in the food space is they have switched to like predominantly video because they're growing their TikTok account. I'm like, okay, we can do the video, but I also need you to write this recipe out. We can't
Just say it.
just say it. We can't just have the TikTok video or the real video. I need a link on your website to
Hmm.
send people to
Mhm.
actually see the recipe. Will the
Mhm.
video catch their attention and you can get the hashtags and do all the things to show up for people with that video?
Mhm.
Absolutely. But for a user experience, they're not going to want to stop and start and stop and start and stop and start a video to make the
Mhm.
recipe
Yep, that's
in
a
the
really good
moment.
point. Yeah.
They're going to want to be able to pull it up and see the full recipe. Most business owners don't think that way. They
Mhm.
want the quickest, the easiest, and the most efficient way to do their content creation. So
Mhm.
finding, again, starting, the biggest thing I tell my clients is you pick where you want to start. If it's writing the blog first, if it's shooting the video first, if it's making the pretty Instagram post, because that's what gets the creative juices flowing for you, that's fine. There's not a one size fits all, but you have to decide that. I can give you
Mhm.
ideas. I
Mhm.
can give you suggestions. I can tell you what's working for other clients or for myself, but you have to make that choice.
Mhm. Well, I want to take a second. I'm going to share my screen because I've talked to the membership a little bit about, thinking about when does it make the most sense to really start caring about more traffic. And so I've shared a little bit about this before, and I'll zoom in a little bit. This is kind of the current business plan that I'm working on. And so over here on the far left, you can see different methods of traffic: YouTube, blog, Pinterest, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And each of these has like a strategy and a workflow and time that goes into it. And so I'm not currently doing all of this, but in my mind, I'm like, ooh, if I can get to this place of having, a weekly rhythm of making YouTube videos, and then, whether it's hiring someone like Camille or figuring out how I'm going to use some workflows to like turn that into a blog post. I'm currently showing up pretty consistently here, but then it becomes like, well, what am I trying to drive traffic to? And how is this going to benefit my business? Especially for all of you who might be like, you're trying to drive traffic to a call where you talk to people and see if you're a good fit, or to learning about a coaching package or an educational package for you, Jen. And so what I've been doing, and it doesn't have to be super complicated, is thinking about the topics that I want to be covering on repeat, because we got to be talking about things over and over and over, almost until the point where we're like, everybody must have heard this. No, they probably didn't, because people don't see everything you do. And so for me, you all know I have this, the intuitive pricing guide. And so I've been working on the back end, like funnels. I always talk about funnels as though if you're on a hike and it's like, I'm hiking the yellow trail. What's the next yellow marker? Because you want to stay on the trail. And so us as business owners, we're using content, we're using communication, we're using emails and funnel pages to lay out what the most intuitive path is for someone to take. So once someone goes through my intuitive pricing guide, the next intuitive piece of support I have is the mindful money planning course. And you all have access to that here in the membership. But since people might just be introduced to me, I'm giving a discounted way to just get that course. Then I have an email sequence that is inviting them to say, I have a 2-week container that's a call and then 2 weeks of mentoring. I call it audit and accountability. And so if someone is still trying to figure out their pricing, they're still trying to figure out how to write a business plan or figure out projections, and they're not feeling they got the support they wanted, they might just want to have some actual one-on-one support. And so for me, that's the next thing on the yellow path of, this is the next thing that I could offer that makes sense for this topic. Then I've been working on a welcome email sequence, where in that sequence I introduce people to the concept of this membership. And now, the funnel pages are built out, and there's an upsell, and there's an onboarding sequence and an offboarding sequence. And so I've been working on the back end of all of this. So now someone coming into this, there's a lot of different ways that they can get introduced to the work that I do, until they ideally stumble into something of like, oh, I prefer doing one-on-one work, or, oh, I really like doing more of a membership experience. For me, until I had at least one pathway that was done and made sense, it felt stressful to be like, let me go drive a bunch of traffic. Drive traffic to what in my mind? And so sometimes as a business owner, you've got to be working on what you would be trying to sell. And I know for some of you, it might be, a freebie. I'm working on Candace's funnel right now, where she has the e-guide for empaths, and then a boundaries course for empaths. And then we're going to be inviting them to a discovery call for her bigger program, the Empowered Empath program. And so now that kind of can string together, it gets more exciting to drive a lot of traffic to the e-guide, because it's like, oh, this can go to work for me. Not everybody who opts into the guide is also going to get the course and also going to have a discovery call, but it makes it much more likely that the right people are going to be called in and then have some kind of interaction. And so for me, if you're in the space where you're like, I don't even know what I would be driving traffic to, we can definitely talk about what is it that you would want, so that you're not only talking about the same thing on repeat. And maybe it's you have two. What I'm doing is working on 4 freebies and 4 pathways specifically, because I want to work on this strategy of doing 4 playlists on YouTube and doing 1 a week, and then starting to drive traffic to it. It's just something that's been on my heart, and it makes a lot of sense. And I have 4 topics, and I'm chipping away at making the freebies. They're not all done. But I just wanted to give some context, because then if right now your business model is just book a discovery call with me and that's all I'm talking about on social media, it might feel like, well, I don't want to talk about that every single day on social media and do a YouTube video about it and so if you're not quite there to think about the diverse ways people could reach out to you or get value from you, maybe it's not time to stress about like multiple ways to get traffic and you can just keep it super simple. But if you are at the place where you want to do more than just one-on-one sessions or have multiple ways people can find you and kind of be groomed or qualified, you know, if someone has gone through your freebie and your course and hopped on a 2-week interaction with you and then they're joining your membership, they're going to be like a really engaged member. Or if they're joining into your 6-month program, they're going to be like showing up, they know who you are. And so a lot of this can also be considered like qualifying steps, like helping the right person to find you. So by the time they're on a discovery call with you, they're like, how do I work with you? So I just wanted to give a little bit of context. And then, I think a lot of this also is very personalized. So if any of you want to ask Camille questions or even just have her like talk through pros and cons, expectations of different platforms. I know some of you have been thinking about different ways of growing some interest in what you're doing. Does anybody want to chime in and talk through what you've been considering?
I can go.
Liz? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, Camille. So for me, I'm coming up on my 2 years of being a business owner. I show up on Instagram, Facebook. I do have a Pinterest page. I actually looked at it I don't do anything with Pinterest, like I don't look at it, but I post there. And so part of my question is around, I'm using plan it, whatever it is that Chelsea uses. And I just recreated for Pinterest, right? And I know that I can't use hashtags and I have to have a shorter caption and whatnot. But are there other ways to drive more traffic to Pinterest than, like, the algorithm is different or the criteria is different for Pinterest than it is for Instagram or Facebook? And then from a blogging standpoint, how does blogging kind of connect with Pinterest or vice versa?
Yeah, so those are good questions. So yeah, Pinterest has a very much different kind of baseline best practices, what they expect from their creators. And depending on who you follow in the Pinterest space, you're gonna find different answers. But for the most part with my clients, I work with them on finding what's sustainable. So is posting 1 pin a day, so you're posting 30 pieces of content on Pinterest a month to show that you're consistent, what's doable? Or is posting 5 pins a day consistently or the whole month more consistent or more doable for you? So we kind of create that baseline strategy based on the amount of content you're creating month over month, the amount of evergreen content that you already have on your platform, and then kind of, again, what's sustainable for you. I just did a strategy call actually last week. And I can show you what I sent once I get it pulled up here. What I sent her as her like baseline strategy based on what she told me she was going to be creating for the month, and what she thought would be sustainable. So let's see.
Yeah, 5 pins a day, not sustainable.
Yeah. So and again, the nice thing is they do have a pretty robust scheduling tool now. But so this particular client wanted anywhere from 50 to 100 pins a month that they were going to schedule via Tailwind or the Pinterest scheduler. So then my next step is, okay, where do you want to drive traffic to every month? And so for her, she had a couple of freebies and opt-ins that she was going to drive 2 to 3 pins per month. She has a podcast. So every single podcast episode, she is going to make 2 to 3 audiogram pins. So those would be video format. And then 2 to 3 static pins leading to either the episode on her podcast or her podcast page on her website. She wanted to get back into blogging. So 1 to 2 pins per month per blog post. She had stuff on Etsy. So again, 1 to 2 pins per month per Etsy listing. She had a financial quiz that she was using to get people's emails to grow her email list. So because that's evergreen, I told her create 5 to 7 pins a month for that. And as you guys can read yourself, but she had a book, an audiobook, a workbook, and a work with me section on her website, where again, those are very evergreen. You can change the colors on the template. You could change the stock photo or the personal photo on the template. You could switch templates every single month or ever for those specific things. Like 1 month you use one template for the quiz, the next month you use that same template for the book, so that she is not necessarily having to recreate the wheel, but is still creating fresh and slightly different content. So the biggest thing that I tell people to start with when you're trying to figure out what is my standard, like, is it 1 pin a day? Is it 5 pins a day? Sit down and write down everything you would like to drive traffic to in a month. My food clients are one of my favorites just because their recycling of content is year over year. So I have a couple that, well, I have one that's for sure does this every year because I've worked with them long enough. But starting in August, we start recycling their pumpkin recipes. So as soon as Starbucks decides that they tell you the release date for their pumpkin spice latte or whatever their fall drinks are going to be for the year, that's when we start pumping out a new version. Not really new, but just creating that new template, whatever changes we've made in the last year to the templates, making sure that those recipes that are probably 2, 3, 4 years old at this point on their website, but are pumpkin related or apple related, we're driving traffic to those year after year after year based on the season. So you can do the same thing in the financial space when people start to plan for the new year, start to plan for taxes. You can do it with the moon phases if you wanted to, being more intuitive business owners in that aspect. You kind of just have to look at what are the trends year over year and kind of start there. What do I have that fits these trends? Do I want to create something that fits these trends to be evergreen? And build from there. How to be found more is posting consistently in their best practices. So the right pin image, having a variety of video and static, if that is aligned with your business, as well as knowing what the heck your keywords are supposed to be. So doing that keyword research at least once a quarter is the bare minimum that I tell people to do, because stuff shifts. You could have, like, the best example I have is from that darn feta recipe that went viral on TikTok like a year ago, and everybody all of a sudden was making this feta pasta recipe. Nobody would have predicted that that would have jumped 3,000%. But if you had a feta recipe or a pasta recipe at that point, that's when you should have started posting it more on Pinterest to meet people where they're at when they're searching. The biggest thing is looking at Pinterest through the search engine lens versus a social media lens.
Well, I think that's the biggest difference to me, and why it makes sense that, like, it's going to be over the course of time, because it doesn't feel to me like I know what you were saying, Candace, that you have a post that you create for Instagram, and so, I might as well put it on Pinterest to start populating there. And then what I'm hearing is, like, there's this other layer of that particular post would just be driving them to your Instagram, right? If you're
I have it
repurposing,
driving
or
it
does
to
go
my
a
link
different
tree.
link? Oh, okay.
There's-
Cool. And so then what I'm hearing Camille say is, this is then the next layer of being like, what is the specific? So, for you, where I think right now you have 4 blog posts, do you create 2 or 3 pins each month? That's really just kind of exclusive for Pinterest, because then it's going to be 3 ways that people could come to each of those blog posts. And that's where, to me, it makes sense. It's like this big web, I kind of picture a beautiful mind where there's like all these different like strings and numbers, and like everything connects over time. Now, Camille, do you feel like where most of us are in maybe not highly searched like when I do keyword research for people in our space, it's like they're never going to be high numbers of searches for, doing energetic clearings of your house, the same as do I want an iPhone or an Android? Like they're just more niche. But the people who are searching that are really looking for a solution because they're like actively trying to figure out if that's something that they want to do. How is it worth pursuing this type of platform if you're not in like a high search pumpkin recipe type thing, but there probably are people searching for your niche? What do you think about that for healers?
I would say yes, because it's becoming more searched. So Pinterest since before COVID, but they really doubled down with COVID that they are the positive platform. They want to be there to inspire and motivate and give people those answers that they're looking for based on the individual pinners' searches. So mental health, moon cycles, natural remedies, all of those things are starting to be searched significantly more. So when I do my keyword research for Kat and Kirsten being an herbal tea shop, I have to think a little bit out of that box in this avenue, because you have to be mindful not to make any drastic claims because we're not medical professionals. And two, you have to think of how people in the beginning of, in their specific case, it's the herbal tea side, but the beginning of their herbal tea journey, they don't necessarily know what they're supposed to be searching for. And I feel like that can go across the board for any healers, any mindset, anything that's not the commercialized version of whatever it is. Because money mindset's been commercialized, productivity's been commercialized, and so people now search based on like book titles and what these gurus have told them to search for. But if you're truly in that natural empath, trying to do what's best for you side of things, you have to try to think of what you searched at the beginning.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of you really enjoy working with like the beginners, and we've talked about this. Like, do you want to be the first person that introduces them to Reiki? Do you want to be the first person they've done an astrology reading for? I'm thinking about Tracy. Or are you like we call Candace sometimes the cleanup crew? Like someone has maybe spent money on other things and still has the physical pain and then comes to Candace. So really thinking through, is your person searching, how do I deal with chronic pain, even though they have no idea that energy healings are going to help that? Or are they searching, is Reiki better than emotion code? Like how savvy are they about the solution they're seeking?
Right. And you guys can spout out some keywords and we can, hold on, there we go. We can see. So if you just type in astrology, this is what Pinterest says. So it's going to give you some profiles. It's going to give you some suggestions. But if you truly just click astrology and click search, you're going to get this. So Pinterest, typically, if you're looking at Pinterest from left to right over here in the bubbles, is most searched keyword versus least searched. To be honest, if it's showing up in a bubble, it's searched a lot. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here in the first place. But it just gives you an idea of that. What was the other one you said, Chelsea? Reiki?
Yeah, Reiki.
I know how to spell that, but
yeah, with an I. There you go. Reiki healing.
So it is auto-populating on its own, which means one, they're not censoring it due to medical, because sometimes some of these they like don't auto-populate because they don't necessarily want to feed you false information either knowingly or unknowingly. It just helps their misinformation clause or whatever. But so as of right now, it's an open keyword. It gives you what people are potentially searching for or what they think people are wanting to search for. But if we just stick with the main keyword, It's searched enough that they're giving us bubbles. Again, if there's
Mhm.
bubbles showing up,
Gotcha.
it means people are searching for it. So
Yep.
it's going to give you profiles, and then the most searched keyword. You guys can kind of see what businesses are trying to target these keywords as
Mhm.
well. Gotta shrink you guys a little bit. So I don't know if these mean anything to anybody, these
Mhm.
companies.
Well, and I think what this is also showing is the different types of content. So she scrolled by a video, so that I guess we don't know just by looking at it, but it might have been created as an Instagram reel or as a TikTok video, and then they're taking that and bringing it over here, as opposed to some of these things like how to do Reiki, the long one. Looks like it's kind of like created just for Pinterest, like it's the perfect size for this, and then some of them are squares. So this is showing you the diversity of, are you trying to drive traffic away to a specific, one's going to blogs, one's going over to the TikTok, one's going over, and so it's really just the hub of all this information. And so
Yep,
then
so
you show
this
up in
was probably an Instagram story, just because they're
interesting.
sending it to Instagram. So I feel like they probably just grabbed that off their Instagram story.
Mhm.
This one I would not suggest doing. Anytime anything is time sensitive, Pinterest is not the place for it, because she could go in and delete this, but if it's been saved anywhere else, it lives on
Yeah,
those places.
that makes sense. Yeah.
So, and it doesn't even look like she has it linked to anything, because it's not auto-populating a link. But lists tend to do well in these spaces. I would not promote something like this. They're spending money on this. I can't read it.
Yeah.
It's very small. It's a lot of text. This is a good one. They are spending money on this because it
How
says
can you tell? Oh, I see.
Says
Promoted
promoted
by. Okay. So they
So if it's
created
an
that as a
ad,
pin and then kind of done a boost.
yep. So they're running ads in some capacity. Ads are pretty robust.
Okay.
On Pinterest. But this I feel like is a good one because it's spaced out enough that on mobile, even if you were scrolling quick, you can still read everything. She tells you it's free access. She tells you it's 5 days. This is super hard to read and looks like it probably was a textbook. These do well. What I tell my clients to do is try, if you're going to do something like this, try to keep it to 3. Anything above 3 is really hard to read and can be super overwhelming to people as they're scrolling past. So if you hook them with 3 tips or hook them with 3 ideas, your whole blog post can be the whole 6. But the pin, I would stick, and again, there's no link here, so they're not driving traffic anywhere. So I would say this is not a good pin just due to that, because it's what we call a dead pin. But most you want the longer one. You will see square ones. Typically, when you see squares, it's either an ad that a company just didn't want to spend time recreating to be the right size. Or 2, it's a product image being pulled from somebody's website that they might not necessarily know, because like this is an Etsy one, so it's probably just a product listing. This looks like a product listing.
Oh, speaking of products, could we talk about affiliate? I know, for example, Candace is an affiliate of an essential oil company and a crystal company. How do you handle, like, if you are an affiliate of something, should you create a blog post about it and then drive traffic to the blog post, or can you actually put direct links?
2 years ago, I would tell you write a blog post, and that's going to be your best way to not get in trouble with Pinterest. They have since revamped their affiliate allowedness, if that's even a word. They've partnered with Amazon, so you can now, if it's an Amazon link, you're not going to get in trouble. And most of the time it will open straight to Amazon. I noticed on a couple things, because I know Walmart has affiliates, I know Target has affiliates or influence, whatever they're calling it. Those also have started to pop up more on my newsfeed and like prompt you to open the Target app or prompt you to open the Walmart app or the Amazon app. So I think with the holidays coming, they're starting to roll out more of the e-commerce side.
Interesting.
If it's something, be careful with product photography. If it's not actually your photography for that affiliate program, sometimes you can get in trouble for that because you might not have the rights to
Interesting.
distribute in that way. You might be able
Yeah.
to post on emails and stuff, but sometimes it gets kind of wonky depending on the company.
So if you have a blog post where you're talking about, like, let's say it's 6 things to do after a Reiki session, and one of them is diffuse a certain oil in your home to help ground in the energy, and you put a link to your affiliate, is that against the rules?
Nope, as long as, I mean, that wouldn't have anything to do with Pinterest at that point. If it's living on your website, you just have
Gotcha.
to follow that law that's in place where you have to disclose that it's an affiliate link.
Okay.
Pinterest for a long time was using that to shut people down, saying that they weren't disclosing in the caption that things were affiliates. But I have since seen that go away since COVID. I think they were sick of, I think they realized people were making money, needed to make money, and they needed to
We're
let
gonna
it
put
go.
effort into this. Well, and I'm really seeing just how you were talking about with your clients in the beginning, and now seeing how Pinterest is working and how you're talking about it, that you really could come to Pinterest, type in energy healing, Reiki, music in the home, or different things for you, Jen, and get ideas for blog posts, and then use Pinterest to drive traffic to your unique content, but how it really can be like ping ponging of, oh, I have this blog post, I want to use Pinterest to drive traffic to it. I need more content ideas for blog posts. Let me go to Pinterest and see what's trending in this topic. So I do get it, as you showed that example and seeing what the bubbles were of, like, hey, you don't want to talk about the same thing over and over and over. You want to feel creative, but hey, you might as well be creative about topics that people are searching.
Yes, that, and you can go, if you have a Pinterest account, a business Pinterest account, you can go to your analytics tab and click trends. And it's gonna give you all the things. So you can type things in here. So if we type Reiki in here, again, it's gonna auto-populate for you. But if we click on it, it'll show you in the last year when it was the highest search.
Interesting.
And then it can give you additional ones, the demographics, so to see if it even is your demographic that you want to search for. And then you can click, like I showed you before, on the actual pins for it to show you more. But in the United States, if you are using your Pinterest, it'll tell you pins that are on your account already that are following trends, as well as the top trends in the last 30 days. And then if you keep scrolling down, you can see weekly, monthly, and yearly changes. This is clicked on growing right now, but you can do monthly, yearly, growing, seasonal. Again, you can click on any of these. You can do interests. So for my clients, typically, at least the ones I do the most research for, are in the food space. But again, you can see the little graph of when things come up, weekly, monthly, yearly change. Let's see, I'm trying to think if any of these kind of, if you look at the health one, that's going to be mostly what you guys, like the big bucket Pinterest puts you guys under. But fire cider benefits, natural cold remedies, how to journal for therapy, what to eat when you're sick, feminine health, self-improvement tips. So you guys can kind of see some are super duper broad and some are super duper narrow, depending on where we are in the year.
Cool.
So grounding exercises. reflexology, daily stretches. So just to give you guys, and like I said, you could do more searches in the actual search bar, but
Mhm.
that's another great place for ideas, because most of the time it's pretty spot on with what people are
Yeah.
searching for.
Well, so for me, what I've talked about for years is that, okay, so now that I feel like I know my niche, and I feel like many of you now know, like what modalities and techniques you're bringing out to the world, who you ideally like working with, the types of offerings, maybe we'll expand, maybe you don't have a course right now and you will down the road, but like, I feel like everybody in the membership right now is a little bit more mature and like, okay, this is who I am and this is what I do. And then I've always been like, okay, once I can really get that almost menu of services nailed down and the freebies and the blogs can flow from that, then it makes more sense to start stepping into this. And my dream is to get to a place where blogging, YouTube, things that I can really batch and put out there and have Pinterest drive traffic to can become like a much bigger part of my traffic, to be at a place where it's like, if I show up on social media this week to create new content, awesome. But if not, I have this like library kind of working for me. Is that realistic? Or is it pretty much always like, if you were 2 years from now, let's say I was consistent about YouTube, blogging, we got Pinterest driving to all of that. For me, I'm like, oh, once I'm homeschooling more consistently, I would like to not have to be on stories as much. I would like to not have to be creating 2 TikToks a day. Like, is that realistic to kind of ease into having traffic come more from these bigger forms?
Yep. I'm not logged into that account because I was logged into mine because I didn't want to have any NDA stuff. But I have a client who I've been working, it was a year in July that we had been working together. They had a pretty established Pinterest account from a while ago. They weren't consistently using it anymore, or weren't properly using it anymore when they hired me.
Mhm.
We've consistently, since I started working with them, been at about 1,200 outbound clicks from Pinterest to their website every single month.
Wow.
Most of that being blog posts that are old.
Wow.
Like consistently old.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, they're in the pet food space, so they have pet owners that are searching for that type of content. But the biggest one, I just did their analytics yesterday. The top 3 pins that brought traffic last month, so September, were over a year old. 6 remedies for itchy dog coats, blueberry popsicle recipe, and one other like dog friendly popsicle recipe. But again, 1,200 outbound clicks.
Yeah.
1,200 outbound clicks to their website is what most business owners want.
Yeah.
And to them, yes, they'd like their email. Yes, they'd like all of that. But in their recipes, we have the products tagged. So if they find this recipe and are like, hey, I don't have this specific Honest Kitchen goat's milk or whatever, they can click on it right there and order it, or they can find the store locally that has it. So for them, it's an exposure platform. Ideally, they want people to order on the website, but because they are also in stores, we don't truly know
Interesting.
how many people are being influenced by Pinterest to go to their local pet store.
Yeah.
And buy. So
Shelly, did you have a question? Did you unmute for a second?
No, I was just gonna say I'm blown away by how many people want to make blueberry popsicles for their dog. And I was trying to think, can I work that in with Reiki and house cleansing
Well, you
and
have
blueberry popsicles?
Well, it is interesting that you have,
Yeah,
for
because I
someone
do.
like
Yeah.
Shelly, she does pet clearings, house clearings. And so I do feel like if you get into, let's say you got into blogging, you have a diverse pockets that you could be drawing people to, which could be really interesting. That they
Yeah,
could be
and
pet
it's
owners
certainly
and new home
something that
buyers
I had not thought about exploiting, but
and
certainly, right, having something obviously like blueberry popsicles in with, a blog about pet communication and healing. Okay.
yeah, I would definitely, and you can reach out if you want, because I have a whole list of like what's done well for them, obviously, in the last year, or what they get asked. They work with a vet or a handful of vets very closely.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, one of the things that I've thought about, right, is that if it's with houses, working with real estate agents, if it's pets, working with vets, right? So, but I had not thought so far as to, I'll say the vet is the obvious, right, where people are taking their pets to get healing.
Yep.
Or having problems, or a trainer, but that's sort of that step further, a touch point, a step further. So,
And you could even like, because most people are probably looking for vets or chiropractic help for my dog or whatever as the healing option, making sure those keywords are in your description, not like outing them, saying they're not the right choice or whatever, but like making sure when you're writing those descriptions, you have, are you trying to avoid the vet, or are you not happy with the animal chiropractor, or whatever it may be, using those broad keywords that you know your potential person is using, or options they might have already exhausted but could be searching for, are keywords you want to incorporate, because that's how you're found.
Yeah. There's a whole world of how you can get people to what you're doing, right? I think for me, just kind of as we round out, for me, I've had this on kind of my vision. Like literally the very first business book I bought, like marketing book I bought back in 2010, was at the time, the only Pinterest book out there. And I've still never stepped fully into leveraging Pinterest, but I've always known, like, it was a clear download for me that it was like, I'm eventually going to leverage this platform. And it's 13 years later that I'm like, oh, I'm almost ready to hire Camille. This is going to be great. And, you know, so just know that you don't have to do everything at once, especially if you're a solopreneur. It might be that you need to like get super clear on your offers and just have some one-on-one clients first to make sure you like the messaging that you're sharing and who you're calling in. Or maybe you're at the place where you're just getting your website up, or maybe you're at the place where you're getting, you know, kind of your first funnel, your first freebie. And some of that needs to be built, in my opinion, before you put too much time and energy in like so many ways of driving traffic, because otherwise it's not going to feel like a good return on investment. If it's just like, oh, Pinterest is growing my TikTok channel, but my TikTok channel isn't making sales either, you know, like really thinking about where are the sales coming from and then driving more traffic to that. But I don't know, I love the long-term vision. And I'm someone who, one of my values of my business is longevity, and another is sustainability, and thinking about some of these ways that over time can be much more automated. And even when you were saying, Camille, like, oh, what's the trend from last year, and like recycling that, like, to me, anything that's creating archives or libraries or organized assets feels like a good use of time. Whereas churning daily stuff out and being creative in the moment every single day, to me, most of my business comes from Instagram currently and nurturing relationships there, but I would love to get to a place where I don't have to be doing that. If I feel inspired to do so, great. If I don't, I know that traffic's coming from elsewhere. So I hope that this conversation has been inspiring. When I put the replay up into the community, I'll make sure to put some ways that you can be in touch with Camille, and also a little bit about the Pinterest marketing strategy and setup service that she's providing through the collective. If you want to reach out and have a clarity call with either her or I, we can line that up. And maybe it's just literally pinning in your mind the vision of like, I'm going to move towards that and get the strategy in place for it to be really robust and like a good return on investment when I do it. Or maybe it's something you want to explore now, and we're happy to support you. Well, Camille, thank you. I know that we've had an hour of your time. I really appreciate your expertise in painting the vision and just keeping this super conversational, because I feel like it can be really overwhelming of like, what are all the things I can be doing, should be doing, content I could be creating. And I think so much of this here in the intuitive business community, it's like, look at some of the options, feel into whether it's your human design, whether it's tapping into just your general intuition, using whatever inner guidance to be like, that was interesting and kind of feels like it's deflecting off me, and that's okay. Or that feels interesting, I need to work backwards to make that work in my business because that feels really, really aligned. And anything in between is just kind of like a point to keep exploring. So thank you for being here, Camille. Thank you for being on live, ladies. I'll get this replay up so that we can revisit it now or in the future if you need to take some notes. But thank you all for being here.
Yes,
Right.
thank you for
Thank
having
you
me,
so
and
much.
feel free to reach out.
Awesome. We'll talk soon,
Thank
Camille.
you.
Thank you.